Alright, hello YouTube. Welcome to another lore stream. Trying something new tonight. It's Thursday. I don't normally stream on Thursday, but we're trying out a little something different. A throwback Thursday, if you will. I'm gonna go over comic stories from the past when they were arguably from a better time. Story-wise anyway. It doesn't seem to be too much to talk about these days with recent comics. But there was a lot of cool stuff growing up and even before my time. And even some stuff, that wasn't necessarily that old. Civil War was what, 2007? I mean, that was like 13 years ago. That wasn't that long ago. So there were a lot of good stories to cover. And so I got this idea from Tailgate and thought that I would do this Throwback Thursday, give it a try and see how it goes, covering some classic comic stories here. So thanks for showing up so far. I've got Baby Blue and Soundwave in here. I do appreciate y'all showing up. And I'll give it a couple of minutes here, see if we can fill up the chat a little bit more. Yeah, 2007 babies are 13. Can you believe it? You and me, man, we're gonna do some maximum carnage. So come on, man, give me the power. Yeah, he was crazy in the Spider-Man animated series when Dormammu was sent after him. But what's up, Tailgate? How you doing, man? Glad you can make it. So as you can see, I got the inspiration from your idea to do some Throwback Thursdays and cover some classic comic stories. So today I'm going to be covering Maximum Carnage, just because that was one of the ones that I felt most like when I think back to childhood or just any comic storyline that really stands out. Maximum Carnage is one of like the most influential in my mind, just because I can remember certain panels clear as day. I can remember certain plot points. Just the way that for me it was one of the first in-universe crossovers that had like other heroes in it, where Spider-Man was teaming up with Captain America and Firestar and Deathlock and Black Cat, even though Black Cat was kind of already from the Spider-Man universe. But it was just this crazy combination of superheroes. Iron Fist was in there, and then you had Carnage teaming up with a few villains. So even though there had been some pretty big events before that, like the Secret Wars and stuff, but this one was happening down on street level and it felt more real, I guess, because it wasn't like this off-world cosmic adventure, or even on Earth, like threatening to take over the whole planet. It was just something that was happening in the streets of New York, basically in Spider-Man's backyard, and it felt real, and it made Carnage feel scarier than your typical comic book villain. Like a typical comic book villain's trying to take over the world, or is some big cosmic entity that looks like an alien or something. And yeah, they're cool and they certainly pose a threat to a team of heroes, but they're not necessarily scary, because you can tell it's just a big comic book villain. It's more meant to represent a big threat, like insurmounting odds. But Carnage was like scary because he felt like a serial killer with superpowers. I mean, that's basically what he was. He was a serial killer who ended up getting superpowers. But he felt, as like a child, like as a kid reading comic books. I mean, I wasn't that young, but how old was I? I don't know. I guess I was kind of a kid. I don't feel like I was reading them like they were inappropriate for me at the age, but I might have been a little bit too young for them, because they did get pretty brutal. Like looking back at them, especially when I was sort of refreshing my memory for this stream, I was like, whoa, there's a lot more to this than I recall, as far as it being so brutal and pushing those limits of like PG-13 with the violence and everything. So yeah, maybe I might have been a little bit too young to be reading them at the time, but they didn't give me nightmares or anything. It was just Carnage felt like a very scary villain, because he felt like someone that could be real, and if they had those powers would do those things. So um, the reason why his suit was red is because it's his blood mixed with the symbiote. Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things about Carnage that I want to touch on as we go through this, because I'm gonna go over, brief synopsis of the plot lines of Maximum Carnage. But as we go through it, I will certainly go into a certain few characters that I think are either not as well known. Maybe people don't know where they might have come from, or I find especially interesting, like Carnage, of course. The titular character is going to be very interesting, and he's more than just a psycho villain. I mean, it's already pretty crazy to think, okay, this is like this psycho killer who got superpowers, not because with so common with comic book villains, like origin stories, is that maybe they're a little bit evil at first, or maybe they have some tendencies or something, but then they have a bad day, and or they are fall victim to an accident, or something like the mafia chases them down or whatever, and they end up incurring some damage that mutates them or gives them the powers, and then that's when they realize, oh, I have these powers now. Okay, now I'm going to become a villain. Whereas Carnage was like the other way around. He was already psycho crazy, and it's almost like he was like, man, if I had powers, I could just kill more people. And then he gets powers and he goes, hey, now I can kill more people. So yeah, he's a certainly an interesting take on the whole symbiote thing, especially when we at this point had gotten pretty used to Venom. We had seen the symbiote saga play out, from Spider-Man bringing it back from Secret Wars, and then realizing that it was this living creature, this living entity, and sort of rejecting it when it tried to bond with him, and then it goes and bonds with Eddie Brock, and there's this whole back and forth, between Eddie being a straight up villain and then eventually becoming sort of an anti-hero. He, at the time of Maximum Carnage, when this story takes place, Eddie had actually gone to San Francisco to be on the other side of the country away from Spider-Man because he didn't want to think about him. He wanted to move on and protect innocence. What he called innocence is just, people who hadn't committed any crimes, and just regular people. And so he had gone to the other side of the country at the time of Maximum Carnage. So he's kind of like this anti-hero. He's like Batman. Like, he still is really brutal and will beat up criminals and brutalize them. And I think there was even reports of criminals having their brains eaten and stuff like that. But yeah, and if you've seen the movie, you'll know. But he was not a full-blown supervillain. Bug, what's up, man? The bug has arrived. You liking the comic effect? Thanks, man. I actually was working on this today. I drew the little outlines and stuff, and then found some big sunburst, whatever they call those big comic splash things to put in the background. I think it frames it up pretty nice, so thank you. Let's see now. Obviously they'll change that for the cartoons. Yeah, and surprisingly, Carnage kept his look in the '90s cartoon. He was red with the black details. It didn't look quite as swirly like blood. They gave it more of a stripy look, but it looked almost like muscle. In fact, it still looked like a weird material, weird texture. Imagine if the Maguire films went to SM4 with Carnage and the Hobgoblin. Now that would be cool. Can't wait for Venom 2. Yeah, Venom 2 is going to be awesome. Yeah, and Absolute Carnage. Man, see, I'd like to actually cover Absolute Carnage eventually, just to sort of go through this whole thing. But let me go ahead and bring this up, and we'll get started. Now that the gang's all here, Bug, Tailgate, Soundwave, Baby Blue, all the gang's all here. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. So let's get into this. So this actually launched in the first issue ever of Spider-Man Unlimited back in the 90s. As you can see there, it was 93. But in the 90s, they were doing this thing where, kind of like they do now, where they every now and then they'll put out a new #1, even if you're like, wait a minute, didn't that book just have a #1, or didn't that character just have a #1? It's like, yeah, they've kind of been doing that for a long time, actually. But it really started picking up in the 90s. This probably might be where it started for all I know, but it's certainly where it started going crazy, and never really left since then. Is just putting out new number ones of different titles of books. So you would have the Amazing Spider-Man, then you would have Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Spider-Man Unlimited, Spider-Man Annual. So you would have like all these different titles, and they did the same thing to X-Men. They had Uncanny X-Men, Excalibur, X Factor, X Force, regular X-Men, the new X-Men. They did it to everything, and or at least their most popular titles. And it was just a way to either create a new number one, or launch a new story, or try to bring in new readers. Same tactics they do now, but I guess because we weren't used to it back then, it's like, oh, a number one, let me check this out. Well, not only was this a new number one for Spider-Man Unlimited, which Spider-Man Unlimited was sort of a almost like a double-sized issue. I don't think it came out I want to say it came out like bi-monthly or something at best. It did not come out that frequently. And it was like a double-sized issue. It was huge. And it would normally come with like an extra story at the end, if I remember correctly as well. Like you'd get one main story and then you get another side story at the end. But anyway, they launched this thing, the number one, volume one, Spider-Man Unlimited, and it's the first part of Maximum Carnage. And as you can see here, it's a really eye-catching cover. And little me walking through the comic book shop sees this, and I'm already a fan of Venom, because even as a little kid, like I said, I might have been a little bit too young for these, but it did mess me up. But even as a little kid, I liked the villain characters. I thought they looked cooler. Like when I was watching Star Wars as a little kid, I thought Boba Fett was cool. I thought Darth Vader was cool, like all the bounty hunters and stuff. So when I'm reading Spider-Man comics or X-Men comics, Magneto looks cool. As you can see, my avatar takes a lot of inspiration from Magneto. I thought Magneto was cool. I thought Venom was really cool. So all the villains really appeal to me. And so I'm already a big fan of Venom. He's got the symbiote powers, everything. I see this guy on the cover. I'm like, what is this dude? And even though this isn't Carnage's first appearance, he had already made an appearance before, had an origin story before this. In a Spider-Man book. I was more of an X-Men guy. Like, I collected all the X-Men books I could get, watched the cartoon, everything. Didn't really read that much Spider-Man. Now, when the Spider-Man cartoon started coming on Saturday mornings, shortly after the X-Men one had begun airing, it started getting my attention a little bit more into Spider-Man. And, of course, Venom was rising in popularity in the arena of comics. And so I had started, becoming aware of him, and then seeing the how the whole story played out in the cartoon show, and starting to become familiar with him in the books. Yeah, by this point, seeing Carnage on the cover, it was no, even though I had never seen him before and he had already been released before, to me this was like, whoa, yeah, no brainer. I got to check this guy out. This is new to me, so I'm getting into this. And like I said at the start of the stream, a lot of this series has some very iconic panels, or at least in my opinion they're iconic because I can still remember them. It's like they're ingrained in my brain. Kelvin, what's up, man? Glad you could make it. And even though this is the comic stream, I made sure to bring all the party favors, which means I'm here, but he didn't bother to give me a Spider-Man mask. That would have been cool. Do you hear that? That would have been cool. Yeah, I always think of Photoshops when it's too late, Angry Prime. Get over it. Deal with it, Angry Prime. So yeah, so there were some really iconic panels, and I want to show you one of them as this series opened up. Let me make sure I don't spoil anything as I scroll down to it, though, because I know these go out of order. Some of you probably already know the story of Maximum Carnage, but just in case. This one right here, though. This image right here is something that is just like, I guess it's kind of like the Silence of the Lambs, when you remember the scene with Hannibal Lecter, and he was restrained at one point, had the mask on and everything, and this kind of evokes that for me. It reminds me almost like Hannibal Lecter being rolled in, completely restrained. Now you notice, if you can see it well, hopefully you can see it well enough on the screen there. that he's obviously surrounded by cops, but he's in a straitjacket. However, one arm is out. It's out of the straitjacket and it's exposed, like the sleeve is rolled up. And this goes back to what Tailgate mentioned before. He said the costume was red because of blood, and I said, yes, there's a very good. They didn't just say, oh, he's Carnage, he's violent and bloody. Let's make it red because of blood. No, it's the symbiote bonded with Cletus Cassidy in a very particular way. It actually got into his bloodstream, whereas the Venom symbiote, I don't know if it by now it may have been clearly defined how it was bonded with Eddie, but at this time, it wasn't really clearly defined how it was bonded with Eddie. The most that you could tell is that it was like in his skin, or at least on his skin, because whenever it was either burned off with fire or blown off with like a sonic attack, because those were the two weaknesses, it left a nude or nearly nude Eddie Brock behind. So you kind of knew, like, all right, this stuff is like on his skin or embedded in his skin, something like that. Whereas the Carnage symbiote is in Cletus Cassidy's bloodstream. He accepted this thing from the get-go, even though Eddie Brock sort of accepted the Venom symbiote from the get-go. I think this one was mutated or something. It's the offspring of Venom. The Carnage symbiote is actually the offspring of Venom. So that's another thing Carnage slash Cletus Cassidy likes to play up, is sort of getting Venom agitated by referring to him as Dad, or his the one who spawned him, so his creator. So this symbiote has mutated in a way to where it's living in Cletus Cassidy's bloodstream. So another thing that adds to the whole black and red look of the suit. But what's important here is, as you can see, they're trying to take all these precautions. They think that the symbiote has been expelled from him. There's no way for it to get to him. And, like any insane asylum, they're going to keep sharp objects away from you, because they don't want anybody trying to kill themselves or hurt somebody else or anything like that. So it's in his bloodstream, but he's got to get it out. But he can't get it out because they don't allow him to have any sharp objects. They don't allow sharp objects anywhere near this guy, right? Well, as you can see, he's being rolled in here. He's got one sleeve rolled up. He's coming in for a blood test. They don't know that it's in his bloodstream. They just keep sharp objects away from him because he's dangerous, because he's a psychopath. But as soon as they go to take the blood test, the Carnage symbiote pops out of this thing and he starts ripping these cops apart. Now, I'm not going to, I only pulled up like 1 or 2 pages. I didn't want to go through every single page for a couple of reasons, but really you should go check out this series on your own after this, even though I'm probably going to spoil a good bit of it. But anyway, the art is classic 90s, really comic book-esque. It doesn't look like Archie comics or anything. It's like good old Marvel comics, but it's brutal. As soon as he gets the Carnage symbiote out, he starts ripping out of his restraints, tearing the cops apart, the doctor, everything just busting out of there. And as he makes his way out, as Cletus Cassidy makes his way out, he sees Shriek, who is another patient who's been restrained here at Ravencroft is the name of the asylum. I had to think about that for a second. Ravencroft is the name of the asylum. And so he sees Shriek in one of the other cells. I know she was a fellow inmate in the Institute, but I believe he either hears her like calling to him. I think she might have some sort of psychic powers or something. She is a mutant. Shriek's a mutant. And she has the ability to manipulate sound in a number of elaborate ways. She can harness it for destructive, concussive force, or use it to disorient and agitate her enemies. She can apparently hypersonically induce intense emotion in those around her. She also has moderate powers of levitation that she can use to fly herself, and possibly some low level of psionic ability. So yeah, I think she was using the hypersonic abilities to sort of summon Carnage near her, because I remember he kind of perks up and looks over towards her cell and finds her, and she's about as crazy as he is. She's about as crazy as he is. Now I do have a picture of Shriek here. Let me get it pulled up. There we go. So there's Shriek, and they become the sort of Joker and Harley of this story, for lack of a better comparison. Cletus Cassidy is basically like Joker with a Venom symbiote, and Shriek here is like Harley Quinn with sonic powers. So the two of them immediately hook up, like, form a partnership, and I believe that at the very least, and again, this is a lot like Harley and Joker, even though I believe this predates uh, Harley Quinn's existence. But or if not, it may predate her appearance in the comics. She might have only existed in the Batman cartoon at this point. But it's a lot like their relationship, because Shriek is certainly romantically interested in Cletus Cassidy, or in Carnage, but he doesn't seem to reciprocate, at least not on the same level. He's at best using her, you know. So it's a very foreshadowing or foreboding of the Joker and Harley relationship that would come to permeate comics for a while there in the 90s, with that psycho villain that has the tragic groupie love interest. um so anyway, they immediately form up, and not only do they become sort of a comparison to Joker and Harley, but they become their own sort of mother and father of this new evil family. One of the almost immediate acquisitions that they get together, or right after they get together, I should say, is Doppelganger. And Doppelganger is another weird creature. I have a picture of him as well. Get him up on screen. There we go. He's an evil, near mindless duplicate of Spider-Man that was created by the Magus, who's one of this cosmic beings. The Magus is, I believe, the opposite entity of Adam Warlock. But yeah, it was events during the Infinity War, which is something that took place after the events of the Infinity Gauntlet. And the Magus, like I said, I believe he has some sort of ties to Adam Warlock. I want to say he's like an evil Adam Warlock, and he might be the doppelganger of Adam Warlock, is probably more appropriate, because he would make all these evil duplicates, and this was the evil duplicate of Spider-Man, and he's almost like Shriek's little puppy, because he doesn't really talk or anything, and he listens to her, and he kind of like cuddles up to her like a puppy, and then gets real vicious with anyone else, like real fierce and aggressive with anyone else. So yeah, he's kind of like their dog. And then from there they get Demo Goblin and Carrion as like their children. And Demo Goblin, you guys are probably familiar with, because he's shown up in Spider-Man before. He's that real demonic looking goblin. Like, you've got Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, who are both guys in suits, but then Demo Goblin was like an actual real live goblin. And then Carrion, who is this guy who could I think like kill things by the touch, or at the very least start draining their life by the touch. Let me make sure I get this guy right. He was let's see, some sort of clone. I just want to make sure I get his powers right. He has a genetic replicator virus. Okay. And the origin of Carrion is superhuman strength, durability. I know he can float around. Disintegrate organic matter. That's what it is. He disintegrates it. I know he could either like suck the life out of it or kill it, because I mean that's what his name is, Carrion. It's like rotting. So yeah, he disintegrates organic flesh. So he's a nasty guy. You don't want him even touching you. So he was pretty vicious. And yeah, they become like this little happy family of evil. And that was something also kind of new to me. I'd seen like teams of villains before, but none that acted like a psycho family, like something you'd see in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I really need to catch up with the chat though. So small in the 90s cartoon. Spectacular did really good with the Venom arc. Yeah, the Venom arc was a bit rushed in the 90s cartoon because it happened sort of early on. It unfortunately, I should say it was unfortunate that it got rushed because the 90s cartoon was good, and later on, even though the 90s cartoon sort of met an abrupt end and they didn't get to finish a lot of this, but later on when they started doing these really big arcs, like they did the Secret Wars and they did that whole goblin thing, Sins of the Father, I think is what they called it, and it was like a 12-part epic, you know. The Secret Wars, I think, was like 6 parts. It was ridiculous. And then they did a whole Carnage saga, and not just like they can't really do Maximum Carnage on Saturday morning cartoons. So what they did was they tied him with Dormammu, and but they brought in the whole multiversal thing and Spider Carnage, you know, because Madam Web at this point had several ties to Spider-Man, you know, had talked to him several times, sent him on missions, and you know she was voiced by Stan Lee's wife, so that was a really cool thing to see her appear anytime. And yeah, it was a shame that the Venom saga happened so early on when they were kind of rushing through things. Everything only got like 2 or 3 parts at the most. Because I feel like if the Venom saga had come a little bit later on, like they had stayed and focused on Green Goblin and the Sinister Six a little bit more in the early seasons, brought Venom in later, he could have gotten like 5 or 6 parts like the Secret Wars or Carnage did, and we would have gotten a better saga. But you know, that's I guess a story for another time. Spider-Man styled Prime. Yeah, I should have put a Prime Spider-Man mask on Prime. Don't worry, Angry Prime. We'll get dinks after the stream. Shriek, the crazy girlfriend. Yeah, she was psycho. I mean, obviously she's like really hot, but you know, she was psycho crazy. And I think she is dead now, Kevin. Yeah, or Kelvin. Sorry. I believe Shriek is currently dead in the Marvel universe. Unfortunately, she is no longer around. The Venom movie, the yellow symbiote in the Venom movie, I believe that was Scream, I think. And I guess she's also dead. But I could have sworn that Shriek has been killed, and it may have even been somewhat recently. But I guess I could pull up her wiki page and make sure. But I think unfortunately, she's dead. And thus the Carnage family was born. That's right. Yeah, not yeah, she doesn't die in this. Later on. No, Marvelous, you are perfectly well in time. Just talking about Maximum Carnage here, going over the Carnage family that was born here, that was assembled as Carnage makes his way across the land. All right, I almost kind of lost my place just getting all sidetracked on all the villains because it was crazy. So anyway, so Carnage breaks out of Ravencroft and takes Shriek with him. They find Doppelganger and start running amok. Meanwhile, Peter, Flash, and Felicia, along with Mary Jane, there were a few people. It was like Mary Jane, Robbie, Aunt May, a bunch of people. They're all attending a funeral for Harry Osborn because at this point in the comics, Harry Osborn had been killed off. Felicia is wondering about the truth behind Harry's death, and Liz tells Peter that Harry's happiest times were when the two of them were roommates back in college. So it's like, you know, kind of this sad moment. And this was kind of why Maximum Carnage is the whole thing, because the Goblin stuff had been done for a while and literally done to death at this point. Like I said, Harry is dead, and they are really focusing on the newer villains like Venom and Carnage. Mary Jane mentions that Normie keeps glaring at them. Peter reflects on how Harry saved his life and that his friends, foes, and family all managed to become jumbled together somehow. Back at Ravencroft, while Carnage is busy with his murdering, he hears someone cheering him on, and that's Shriek. That's I was wondering, like, did she use her powers to sort of summon him, or it was just that she's just in there cheering him like, yeah, kill more, go. So Peter hears that Cassidy escapes Ravencroft, and immediately goes after him. Because, like I said, this isn't the debut of Carnage. He has shown up before. Spider-Man has had a run-in with him before. So when he hears of Cassidy's escape, he's immediately goes into action. So he thinks about also at the same time about how his old foes never really seem to die off. They keep coming back. It's almost like the Batman problem. Why don't you ever kill me? It's against your code to kill, but we just keep coming back. While he's looking for Carnage, he runs into Shriek and Doppelganger, and doesn't do too well against him. He gets beat up pretty bad. Mary Jane hears on television that Carnage escaped, and she's like super worried about Peter. Shriek reveals both her powers and the fact that she and Carnage are an item to Spider-Man, because, like I said, she's a little bit more infatuated with Carnage than he is with her, but still, shit doesn't keep her from boasting to anyone who will listen, including Spider-Man, that they're together. And while she's sort of rambling on, Spider-Man's able to take her out, but then Doppelganger attacks him and breaks some of his ribs. I remember how brutal, I mentioned it before, how brutal this series was, but it was, I guess because it's on a street level, it's not like, oh, he's going to blow up the planet, and so if the bad guys win this fight, a big chunk of the planet is gone. No, if the bad guys win this fight, Spider-Man's ribs are broken, like bones are broken. Like, I don't know, it's on a smaller scale, yeah, but it's so much more visceral. Because I remember this, again, this was one of those panels that stood out to me, where Doppelganger, because he has the 6 arms, let me pull him up again. Since he has the 6 arms, he was able to, it's like Goro in Mortal Kombat, he was able to hold Spider-Man up with a couple arms and then just wail on him with his others, And so you had this like Goro situation from Mortal Kombat, and he ends up like cracking some of Spider-Man's ribs. It was brutal. You just got the Marvel Legends Fantastic Four Walgreens wave. You're a bit disappointed, Marvelous? I mean, it's the Fantastic Four, like they don't have individually, aside from maybe like the Thing and Human Torch, depending on how they made the Human Torch. If he's in like flame mode, that's cool, but if it's just Johnny Storm, it's like, all right, it's just another dude. And then you got Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic, who are both kind of, they're kind of plain. I'm sure they're decent for what they are, but it's the Fantastic Four. Sorry that you feel let down, though, man. That sucks, because, yeah, the Walgreens stuff is usually a little harder to find. Shriek and Scream. Yeah, Scream is, and I should probably cover that after this, because I believe the next big symbiote outing after Maximum Carnage was Separation Anxiety, which introduces Scream and some of the other symbiotes. So maybe I'll cover that on another Thursday Throwback Thursday. What order did I put this in the title? Anyway, so you don't read modern day comics, Kelvin? Yeah, see, that's the thing. I can't really do the modern day stuff. All the art looks like an Archie comic. Like it looks like something I'd see in a Sunday morning paper. It just doesn't look like a classic comic book style. And then the stories are abysmal. I just can't get into them. But that's kind of why we're doing Throwback Thursdays here. Seeing the Marvel DC crossover a while back, Carnage and Joker interact with each other was really cool. Yeah, that is cool when they would do those crossovers every now and then, especially when they did the amalgam comics and the characters like fusing together. You had Batman and Wolverine fuse into Darkclaw. That was man, that would make a fun stream talking about the amalgam stuff. But anyway, let me get love how you start with Carnage and not Venom. Yeah. Well, everybody knows Venom. I guess that's why. Plus, this is something, Venom was already around by the time I was going to the shop and starting to pick up books. So this was something that I actually saw the first issue of and was like, whoa, this looks cool. I want to get this. And I remember reading it. So anyway, so yeah, Spider-Man gets the ever-loving crap beat out of him. Some ribs broken, and I think he manages to hobble his way back to his apartment with Mary Jane. I do remember him, several panels of him where he's, you know, kind of like in his sweatpants, like in around the apartment with no shirt on, and he's got his ribs taped up, you know, all bandaged up, taped up. His whole like torso basically is all wrapped up, and it's an ongoing injury throughout the rest of the series. It's like a movie, you know, if you watch like a boxing movie or something and somebody gets injured somewhere, that's where they're going to get punched, that's where they're going to get hit, and it's going to be this recurring injury that gets played up. So you know that's going to be a thing. Although they actually don't do too much with it, especially they certainly don't do any sort of cheesy like, oh, this is how something. There's lots. It's more just showing how vicious Carnage and the other villains can be is by attacking Spider-Man's injuries. Unlimited did Spider-Verse 2 times. Did Contest of Champions, Maximum Carnage, and etc. Yeah, or Ultimate. I'm sorry, I'm saying Unlimited because that was the issue here. Yeah, I know that later series covered it because those series aired at different times. They were either like in the afternoon or wasn't one of them like on MTV or something, so it was like in the evening. But the original '90s show that we were referring to about with Carnage working for Dormammu, that was on like Saturday mornings, like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning. You couldn't really do that then. Modern stuff you got to pick through. Yeah, that's right, Bug. Yeah. It stems away from the actual beginnings of Venom and Carnage. Harry Osborn is Venom, plus with him having daddy issues. Yeah, yeah, that's the thing too. I think that's why I don't remember that quite as well as I do Maximum Carnage. I mean, partly because, like I said, this is what was out when I actually was going to the store. But even going back and looking through back issues and learning the history, the all the stuff with the goblins and, you know, Norman and Harry, it didn't grab me. Like I said, I was more of an X-Men fan, so the goblin stuff with Spider-Man, I was just like, eh. So even the beginning of the Venom stuff where you're still dealing with the goblins, I'm like, nah. So it really didn't start until Maximum Carnage that got me reading Spider-Man on any sort of regular basis. And the thing is after Maximum Carnage was over, I didn't even stick with it that much. I stayed with X-Men the whole time, and that was really my jam. All right, so let's see. Thought I had. There we go. Okay, so in the next issue, and I thought I had visuals for it. I just don't want to spoil anything, so let's go up here. Yeah, here we go. I love the covers of these things. There we go. The cover art. I mean, how could you not buy it? If you saw that on the shelf, and even if you're just a casual fan, just, you know, if you just know in passing who Spider-Man and J. Jonah Jameson are, you're like, well, okay, what's going on here? Carnage's design is just ridiculously eye-catching. All the tendrils going everywhere. It's impressive with the artist, too, that had to draw him. So after his clash with Carnage, Shriek, and the Doppelganger, Spider-Man is left in an alley with broken ribs. A street gang spots the vulnerable hero and tries to take advantage of the situation. However, before they can harm the wall crawler, they are ambushed by Cloak and Dagger. And see, Spider-Man's going to start building his own team. Just like the Carnage and Shriek have their family, Spider-Man's going to start building his own team here. And after a barrage of Dagger's light knives and a quick trip into Cloak's darkness, because he has that weird teleportation thing inside of him that just sends you to this dark dimension, the gang members run off screaming like babies. And with Spider-Man needing medical attention, like severely, Cloak and Dagger teleport him back to the Holy Ghost Church. Not far away, Doppelganger swings Shriek away from Spider-Man because she had gotten beaten while she was gloating, or kind of, I don't even know if it's gloating. She was just sort of telling Spider-Man stuff. about herself. But once it believes she's safe, it drops her onto a nearby building and doubles back to finish off Spider-Man. Yeah, Shriek is like her loyal puppy dog. Shriek decides to follow after Doppelganger, but wonders how things are going with Carnage at the Daily Bugle, because Carnage went off to talk to J. Jonah Jameson, hence the cover art here, because he wanted to get Spider-Man's attention. At that moment, Carnage has just left the Daily Bugle, where he roughed up J. Jonah Jameson. This was all so he can coerce Jameson into publishing a story to warn both Spider-Man and Venom that he is coming after them. Yeah, Carnage has a grudge against Venom as well. Even though Venom, like I said, at this time is over in San Francisco, Carnage doesn't care. He wants to get his attention through the news outlets, because that way it'll reach him, and he wants him back in New York so he can get some sweet revenge. Although Jameson wants to run with it because he doesn't like Spider-Man, Joe Robertson refuses to give in to Carnage's extortions. However, when Jonah insists, Joe concedes on making a journalistic compromise. Meanwhile, Spider-Man wakes up in the Holy Ghost Church, where Cloak and Dagger are tending his wounds. That's when they are ambushed by Shriek and the Doppelganger. Seeing Cloak and Dagger, Shriek is glad, because she was once pulled into Cloak's darkness when she was merely a drug addict. Yeah, that's something about the backstory of Cloak and Dagger, is they come from like the slums, so a lot of their heroic escapades are street level type stuff, and specifically with drug addicts, drug dealers, stuff like that, because Dagger's light powers are supposed to have some sort of healing element, and then Cloak, with the whole pulling you into darkness, is like almost like a scared straight type of thing. So this is sort of making reference back to Cloak and Dagger, like their origins, and saying that Shriek was one of those drug addicts that had been pulled into the dark dimension by Cloak at one point to shake her from her habit. So yeah, Shriek has a pretty messed up past. It's tragic when you think about it. I mean, she's psycho and everything, but it's not like Harley, where Harley Quinn, I compare her to Harley Quinn, but Harley Quinn's like, she was a doctor and top class, or I think, if I remember correctly, I think she might have swindled her way to being top of the class. And when I say swindled, it's putting it mildly, but still, she didn't necessarily have a rough life, or at least so it seemed, until she got with the Joker, whereas Shriek has had it pretty rough this whole time. Plus, being a mutant in the Marvel Universe, especially back in the 90s, mutants were not treated very nicely at all. So, anyway, so she was glad to see them there to, hopefully get some revenge, although I don't know how much of a weakened state she might still be in. So, Cloak is being bombarded by Shriek's sonic powers, which work like an echo chamber when blasted into his darkness, so it's actually, she's able to do some damage to him. As Dagger comes to her partner's aid, Carnage arrives to balance the scales. Things start to go downhill for the heroes as Carnage strikes Spider-Man's bruised ribs. Like I said, that would be used again, causing him great pain. Shriek manages to overpower Cloak, prompting Dagger to come to his aid. Dagger begins trying to keep Shriek's sonic blast at bay with her light powers. However, Shriek proves the stronger, striking Dagger, causing her to disappear in a flash of blinding light. And I remember Cloak thinks she's like dead or something. He freaks out at this, and he's also weakened without something about Dagger's light powers stabilize Cloak, and I think he's in like a weakened state for a while until Dagger returns. The resulting burst of light appears to take down both Cloak and Spider-Man. Thinking his foes are dead, Carnage is furious that Shriek killed Spider-Man, a privilege that he wanted for himself. See, he's totally Joker. He's totally the Joker. Still, they decided to continue their reign of terror and leave the church where the fight had been taking place. Outside, Demogoblin watches as they go, and this is where Demogoblin joins the Carnage family. He had been trying to track down the doppelganger since it was possessed by two death spawn that only he can see, because he's a real goblin. Intrigued by Carnage and Shriek, he decides to follow after them. Back inside the church, Spider-Man and Cloak recover from the burst of light, but they find no sign of Dagger. Cloak fears the worst and assumes that she's dead. Like I said, he freaks out. He's like screaming. He's really upset. But back in San Francisco, Venom finally sees the news report about Carnage and immediately heads towards New York. So this series, I mean, this is like only 2 issues in, and you can see this is just insane. This is, I mean, it just is nonstop action, moving the plot forward, but at the same time, it's not boring or trifle like, oh, he's building a super weapon. It's like, no, this crazy guy busts out of jail. There was other crazy people that bust out with him. They're finding more villains. They're all building up to take on Spider-Man, and he's already seeming to be overwhelmed. I mean, he's getting his ribs busted up. He's losing these fights. Cloak and Dagger show up to help him, but they seemingly blow up Dagger. I mean, obviously she's not dead, but it's like they seemingly blow her up. I mean, and this is just all in the first 2 issues. So that's why, I mean, aptly named Maximum Carnage. Seto Kaiba. Nice stream, subbed. Thank you, Kaiba. Plus Spider, let's see, I'm behind here. Seems the actual, okay, there we go. Plus the Spider is a lone wolf character. The team wasn't even that cool sometimes. Yeah, I prefer Spider-Man to be by himself. It's fine if he forms a team occasionally to take on another team when he's being overwhelmed, but I prefer him to be on himself. You're talking on the show. Oh, okay. Those were the days. Those were the times. So on to the 3rd issue here, and I'll try not to get too long-winded on each issue because there are 14 of them. And some of them are kind of just like giant fight scenes, so it'll be easy to go through them. But I just want to go through the main plot points. And these first couple issues were pretty important just because it establishes everything. But when Venom gets back to New York, he's, like I said, he's looking for Carnage. I think he wants to fight Carnage as bad as Carnage wants to fight him at this point. It becomes this sort of area of contention between Spider-Man and the team that they end up forming, because you've got a lot of heroes like Captain America, Spider-Man that don't want to be taking the violent route, the violent method, whereas Venom is perfectly happy to just end Carnage once and for all. So Carnage, halfway across the city, as Venom makes his way back, and Spider-Man and Cloak are recovering, nursing their wounds, trying to figure out what to do about Dagger. Across the city, Carnage confronts Shriek and Doppelganger about them going after Spider-Man without him, like he's pulling a straight-up Joker here, or Joker, I guess, pulls a him later on with Harley. But he's not happy that he didn't get included in this attack on Spider-Man. So he effectively puts Shriek in her place. Carnage is most certainly the most powerful of this group here. So he effectively puts Shriek in her place, and indicating that Spider-Man is his. Every bone and sinew, every drop of blood or bile, mine. Yeah, he's psycho. At that moment, Peter Parker's wife, Mary Jane, waits for her husband to return home. She's actually started smoking again. This was also something interesting that happened in the 90s. Characters could still smoke. It was like outlawed at some point. I think either in the late 90s or early 2000s. Because, like Wolverine used to have a cigar all the time, stuff like that. Well, Mary Jane actually was depicted smoking a few times, and she had quit. They had shown her sort of having kicked the habit to try to show that in a positive light, but at the same time, because the character had a history with smoking, and she's so stressed out about the safety of Peter in this whole event, she started smoking again. It was one of those things, like I said, when I'm looking back, doing my research, getting ready for the stream, because it's been so long, it was just weird seeing a character holding a cigarette like that, and especially Mary Jane. But yeah, she's so stressed out and worried about Peter that she's smoking. So that's kind of sad. Um, when she sees the beating that her husband has taken, she is angry that he went back on his word to stop being Spider-Man. Because he's always promising her that he won't be Spider-Man, or that he'll stop for a while or something. But he can't. He can't. So she's kind of pissed off. But she's just pissed because she's worried about him. So at this time, believing Shriek to be in danger from Carnage, Doppelganger attacks. So this is back where Carnage is sort of putting Shriek in her place. Very much again like Joker and Harley, he's being pretty abusive. And Doppelganger, like I said, he's like her little protective puppy dog to Shriek. Even if Carnage is the one doing it, Doppelganger doesn't care. He's super loyal to Shriek for whatever reason. It may be her psionic powers influencing him. But regardless, he attacks Carnage. Using a piece of the alien symbiote, Carnage easily knocks Doppelganger away and then informs Shriek that this band has one leader, and it's him. Back at the Parker solo apartment, Mary Jane figures that Peter's enhanced healing will have his broken rib healed after a night's rest. So Peter does have it's kind of like a healing factor. I don't think it's quite as strong as like Wolverine's or Deadpool's, anything like that, but he does heal quicker than the average person. But Peter can't rest. He can't be sleeping or taking any nights off while Carnage is out there, because he's slaughtering people. Simultaneously, while this is going on, Carnage and Shriek, they make up, because Shriek's like madly in love with him, and as long as she does what he wants, Carnage is fine with keeping her around. So they agree that if they are going to kill, they are going to kill together. So they go out and start slaughtering like a date. I think they even refer to it as a date. And Carnage takes her to a park. It might have even been Central Park, but he takes her to a park where they start killing couples in the park, and that's their date. It's really screwed up. It's really dark, but it's it's Carnage. Things are not quite so copacetic at the Parker household, however, because Mary Jane is like really pissed off at Peter, doesn't even want to let him go. He's not happy that she's smoking again, and he feels like he can't just shirk off his responsibility. So, and he's still grieving. He thinks Dagger's been killed. So it's just, this issue is like tension. It's like nothing but building tension. So yeah, it is in Central Park. It is in Central Park that Carnage takes Shriek on a date. I knew they went to a park. I was like, oh, I wonder if it's Central Park because it's New York. So it is. They do go to Central Park and just start slaughtering people. Spider-Man, obviously he can't hold back. He's got to go, and so he's distracted, of course, thinking about Mary Jane and everything. But he spots Demogoblin, and Demogoblin has ties to Doppelganger, so he's thinking that he can like lead him to Carnage. He doesn't know that they're teamed up yet. I don't think, because he hasn't encountered him yet. But he just remembers that Demogoblin is like, oh yeah, he'll be able to sense Doppelganger, the weird soul thing. So Demogoblin actually spots Spider-Man, though. He can tell he's following him, so he doubles back and ambushes him. And so Spider-Man's being attacked and ambushed once again. He's just not having any good luck. He's really not. But after a fight, and this is mostly just kind of a fight scene. Like I said, this issue served to build up a lot of tension. Then it was just mostly a fight scene. After that, Spider-Man's able to sort of fight back Demogoblin, because it's mostly a one-on-one fight. So he's able to fight him off and go back and recover with Mary Jane, at their apartment. So this was mostly just to build tension in this episode, but it was still really well done. Now we start getting into Venom getting involved. So let's see. Wow, we're going an hour already. Thanks you guys for hanging out so long. End of the day, 90s will be favorite and spectacular close second. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you're probably just talking in the chat, Tailgate, but I would agree with that. That 90s is my favorite. Spectacular second. Ultimate is not bad. It's just, it's all right. Angry Prime. Which one do you think is better, Ultimate Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man?
Neither. The 90s Spider Man is the best. How do you like that?
Potato, potato. Yeah. Um. So yeah. Let's see. Let me continue going through this. I might have to split this into 2 streams. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. All right. So we've got Doppelganger meeting up with Carnage, Shriek. I'm sorry, not Doppelganger. Demogoblin. Demogoblin is on his way to meet up with Carnage, Shriek, and Doppelganger, and ran into Spider-Man. Spider-Man and him have a fight. They both kind of withdraw at the end. Spider-Man goes back to recover with Mary Jane back at his place, and Demogoblin continues on to look for Doppelganger, and of course Carnage and Shriek will be there too. Carnage, Shriek, and Doppelganger are in a warehouse where there's like props for rock shows and stuff, so it's a proper villain hangout of a warehouse. And Shriek loves it, being a rocker chick, and so she thinks it'll make a great home for their family. And that's when she suddenly detects the smell of sulfur, which is brought on by Demogoblin flying around nearby. Back at the home of Peter Parker, Mary Jane has an unexpected visit from Eddie Brock. And Brock has been seriously injured and passed out on the floor. Mary Jane upset that Peter wants to help Brock, especially since he promised her that he would give up being Spider-Man for a while again. And she doesn't want to watch him get hurt, but Spider-Man is told that, Carnage is back. And that's why Eddie's here, so he's got to do something. Now, this was another one of those iconic panels that is like burned into my brain. So let me get this pulled up here, because I made sure to get a couple of these that just really stood out. And of course, you'll probably know why as soon as I pull it up on screen. But it is what it is. As you can see here, though, this actually has the shot or picture or whatever of Peter Parker with the taped up ribs. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of him walking around in like his pajamas, and he's even got little bare feet slippers on, and he's got his ribs taped up, and that's, like I said, it's kind of like this ongoing injury. And then of course you got Mary Jane in a robe that is starting to come open, and we see her lingerie. So that's one of the reasons that it stood out in my mind. But also just seeing Venom in the state that he's in, you don't always see him like that. It's not often that we see Venom get this beat up, especially when he's not fighting against someone like Spider-Man or like the Fantastic Four, the Human Torch, and I believe Reed Richards also has the sonic gun that could do damage to him like this. So seeing him this beat up by something that wasn't Spider-Man or Fantastic Four, some sort of team like that, was pretty incredible. And then of course just the visual of the shock of Peter and Mary Jane. So yeah, this was another one of those panels that was just really ingrained in my brain and made me worry for Venom and wonder what was going to happen. Each one of these issues did a really good job of getting you to want to buy the next one as soon as it came out. You didn't want to miss a single one. And I mentioned at the beginning of the stream that they were doing this thing in the 90s, and it was in full effect here, where they were splitting off into all these different books. So you had Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider, all these different ones. And Maximum Carnage, in order to get people, or at least an attempt to get people to get these different books or give them a try, started jumping around. So it started in Unlimited, and then it went to Web of Spider-Man, and then Amazing Spider-Man, and now we're in just regular Spider-Man. So it was kind of jumping around in all these different books. So it wasn't the easiest thing to keep up with in that sense, especially as a younger reader, and I'm kind of just used to getting all the issues of Uncanny X-Men just kind of going in order. So it was weird to jump around from all these different Spider books. But they made you want to do it, though. They made you want to take that extra effort, make sure you were getting the next part of this series, because each time it ended like this, you're like, I gotta see what happens. I gotta see what happens next. But it was really well done like that. I mean, that's good writing, good business, right? Of course, the Spider-Man series that spawned the most memes is arguably the superior one. Well, yeah, I mean, that should go without saying. I think that's logic. It's common sense, right?
I mean, I'm basically a living meme, and I came from Cyberverse, and we all know Cyberverse is the best. I can't even say it with a straight face.
Usually used to Venom making his opponents look like the state he's in. Yeah, exactly. That's usually how the other guy looks after a tussle with Venom. Exactly. So there was a lot of stuff that made this like stand out all throughout the series. Like I said, we're on issue, I think this was the end of issue 4. So all throughout the series, you've got these iconic panels, images stand out in your head, moments, and I need to make sure and check the dates, but I don't think Harley was a thing in the comics yet. She might have already appeared in the Batman animated series, but I don't know that she was a thing in the comics yet. And so this was really interesting to see this whole dynamic between Carnage and Shriek, the way that she was just fanatically in love with him, and he was really abusive towards her, but understood the way she felt far enough to use that. So he's just evil on all these levels. It's crazy. It's crazy. The 8-bit Venom looks like he's alive. Yeah, I really enjoy these gifts. They're both from the Marvel vs. Capcom games, the old fighting games. Of course, the sprites don't look like that anymore. They don't even use sprites anymore. So yeah, so this was one of those things. Seeing Eddie in this state definitely had to continue on. So Spider-Man and Venom, after they kind of go back and forth, and Mary Jane doesn't want anybody getting hurt, they finally agree they're going to go out and put a stop to the Carnage family, because now they got Demo Goblin with them, and Cloak is still out there looking for vengeance for Dagger, because he's still believes that she's been killed. So Spider-Man and Venom try to follow after their foes after Carnage has been weakened by Cloak. Cloak, when he is after them, he does catch up to Carnage, Shriek, and Doppelganger, and Venom actually knocks Carnage into the Dark Dimension inside Cloak, and it messes with Carnage for a while. It's not like it's one of the symbiote's weakness, but it definitely messes with him on a psychological level. And so once he emerges or re-emerges from the Dark Dimension, Spider-Man and Venom are able to sort of follow after him, take him down a little bit, and as they do, it's almost like Carnage had a fallback plan. But as they're following the weakened Carnage, they hear these moans, and they look back and see that Black Cat's been buried alive and under this like burning rubble. So Spider-Man has to, does he stop Carnage? Does he save Black Cat? And of course he's gonna go back and save Black Cat. But that adds another member to the team. And I do have an image of Black Cat here. There we go. So now the team is growing. So we've got Spider-Man, Venom. Technically, you can still count Cloak and Dagger. and now Black Cat's joining up with them. So Spider-Man's team is growing almost faster than the Carnage family. They're just fighting an uphill battle is the only problem. He's looking for you, Kelvin. Yeah, the Venom, the 8-bit Venom, yeah, he's after you, buddy. You better watch out. All right, let me at least get halfway through Maximum Carnage. I'm going to try to get through all of it, but I want to at least try to get through half. That's my goal. We're going to push for all of it, though. I made sure to get plenty of Woota. All right. So Spider-Man helps Black Cat out of the collapsed and burning building, the rubble, because she had just been battling against the Carnage family. Venom is there, but his symbiote is weak to fire, so he can't really help out too much. Once they're all outside, though, Venom's strength begins to return, and to Spider-Man's relief, even though Brock doesn't buy it, he's actually happy that he's okay. Venom then asks what became of Carnage and becomes furious when the wall crawler tells him that Carnage managed to escape while he was busy saving Black Cat. Venom tries to start a fight with Spider-Man until Black Cat orders him to stop. She is upset that Venom is willing to pick a fight in the middle of all this when they need to be tracking down Carnage. Venom's about to argue this, but realizes that Black Cat is right, so yeah, there's no point in arguing. She then scolds Spider-Man, telling him that she doesn't need him to protect her, and that Venom was right about stopping Carnage above all else. So she's actually siding with Venom in taking the full-on effective approach, like the lethal approach, that Carnage needs to be put down. This is you could say that Venom started the divide, obviously, because Spider-Man isn't about killing, and Venom's willing to take Carnage out once and for all. So that kind of started the divide right there. But it's just the two of them. They were always opposed in that way. But now that a team is starting to form up, this really begins that divide, because now you've got someone who's siding with Venom in this case. And we'll see that sort of continue as the team grows. So when Black Cat suggests that they just worry about it later and go ahead and continue on, Spider-Man refuses to continue working with Venom, as it would compromise his morals. I don't know, I said morals. Although he promises to do everything in his power to stop Carnage, the Black Cat and Venom are unimpressed and leave to deal with their mutual foe on their own. Once left alone, Spider-Man staggers to pain due to his broken rib. So he's still suffering from the rib injury, and Black Cat and Venom kind of just leave him. You think the team's growing, but it's not going so well. They're not as tight as the Carnage family is. They need to really get it together, because Carnage and Shriek and Doppelganger, Demo Goblin, they're already sort of on the same page, even if they don't necessarily like Carnage because he's sort of ruling by force. They're at least all working together, and they're just committing all these random acts of murder. However, Demo Goblin is becoming tired of the randomness, because he does have a purpose. He wants some sort of plan. He wants some sort of structure to all this. And of course, Carnage is like, hell no, I'm all about total chaos. And so this actually pisses off Carnage to the point where he attacks Demo Goblin and tells him, there is no plan. So this is sort of how he treated Shriek, where he was not happy with her sort of acting on her own, doing her own thing, and he, quote unquote, showed her who the boss was. This is him doing the same thing to Demogoblin. He doesn't like Demogoblin wanting structure and a plan and all this stuff, so he attacks him, and Demogoblin is not quite as submissive because Shriek's like in love with Carnage, so Demogoblin's not as submissive. So Shriek actually has to break the two of them up, and she reminds them that they have all been alone for too long and just need to stay together, so that way they can create more murder and destruction. Surprisingly, both Carnage and Demogoblin relent and agree to put aside their differences. I think this is probably from Shriek's psionic powers, how she's able to manipulate emotions a little bit with her supersonic power. Carnage becomes angry when Demogoblin starts talking about their purpose again, though, so he's still like ready to fight at the drop of a hat. But Shriek uses her womanly wiles to calm Carnage down and refers to Demogoblin and Doppelganger as their children, sort of playing to his ego and putting him in that father role. So let's see. Later on in this issue, Spider-Man is swinging around the street, resuming his search for Carnage, because most of this issue is Spider-Man sort of resolving things with his family, and just like Carnage is resolving things technically with his family in his own way. It was always this dichotomy in these issues. You would see Spider-Man, fighting on his own, and then Venom fighting on his own, and like how they deal with it, or Carnage dealing with his quote unquote family and the way that he handles them and the way that that family gets along, and then it would cut to Spider-Man or to Peter Parker and the way that he handles his family, his actual family, and the way that they get along. So a lot of interesting things in Maximum Carnage, a lot more beyond the surface level of just, oh, this is a psycho superpowered monster guy that's killing people and Spider-Man's got to save the day. It's like, yeah, there's that, and there's some cool fight scenes and stuff. There was a lot of interesting writing going on, a lot of cool things about how they would, like I said, show this dichotomy of like, here's how this guy deals with his family, here's how Peter Parker deals with his. So a lot of interesting stuff there. But anyway, that was what most of this issue was. So Spider-Man is, at the end of this issue, we see that he's looking around for Carnage and his crew, but because of the talks that he'd been having with his family, they were sort of like still ringing in his head, keeping him distracted, similar to how Mary Jane had him distracted at a couple issues ago, just thinking about the things she had said, letting it resonate in his mind. And he, as he's web slinging, he sees that there's a man being cornered. He's got his spider sense going off, and he sees a man being cornered, and he's about to be beaten. And when he goes down to save the man from being beaten, he learns that people, because he's like, why are they attacking you? And he finds that these are just like normal looking people. It wasn't like a gang or villains or anything. It was just other regular people that didn't seem to really have anything in common with each other than that they all just wanted to beat this guy up. And it was almost like the rage plague or something from 28 Days Later. It was just these people just wanted to go crazy. And what Spider-Man starts to notice as he looks around the streets and patrols the streets is that more and more of these occurrences are starting to happen, and people are basically going crazy. It's like ever since Carnage started the whole massacre, people are losing their minds. And he's suddenly swarmed by an angry mob. I mean, this is like spreading like wildfire, this weird rage. And Spider-Man is swarmed by an angry mob. He tries talking reason. He obviously doesn't want to fight them. These aren't supervillains or anything. These are just random people that just randomly decided to attack him. But he's not able to talk any reason. He's not able to fend them off. in any sort of peaceful or non-violent manner, that wouldn't cause any sort of injury or anything. And what, in a surprising turn of events, Spider-Man actually becomes fed up. Like I thought he was either gonna just take the beating or he would just web sling away. But I remember being surprised at the end of this issue because Spider-Man just freaks out. He just freaks out. He just starts throwing punches. He's like he's in a mosh pit. Spider-Man suddenly becomes like he's in a mosh pit. It just starts throwing elbows, throwing fists, and just wails on people. It completely loses its temper. And he starts yelling at everyone too while he's doing it. Like while he's beating him, he starts yelling that he's like, if you all want to act like savages, I'm gonna treat you like savages. And he's still, it's not like he's gone evil. He's like, I'm trying to stop the city from going down in flames. He's yelling at them that he's trying to help them, that he still wants to, but he's completely lost his temper, lost his cool, and he snapped on him. And it was just crazy to see Spider-Man just like wailing on people, like this is what you get, kind of thing. So it was pretty bizarre, man. It was pretty bizarre. Let me catch up with the chat real quick here.
Auto memes transform and meme out.
Nothing wrong with the true 3-part stream series Orbital. This is fun. Well, I'm glad you guys are having fun. Then I might have to break this up simply because where I am, it's getting kind of late, and I don't want to keep people up. And we are about like halfway through here. This would probably be a good place to wrap it up. In fact, because it's this nice like build up to Spider-Man losing his cool, almost losing hope. Because it felt like he wasn't just fed up, like, all right, you want to hit me, I'm going to hit you back. The other stuff that he was yelling at these people when he was saying, I'm trying to save the city, it's going down in flames. It was like he was losing hope. Like he felt like maybe in the back of his mind he might not be able to save the city from all this. And it wasn't just pure rage that he was lashing out at these people. It was almost like despair and hopelessness. So it was like I said before about the whole dichotomy thing where they show the Carnage's family and then Spider-Man's family and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff going on in Maximum Carnage that makes it that standout series. It's not just, oh hey, Spider-Man and a lot of cool heroes against Carnage and a lot of cool heroes, and Venom is there too. There's so much going on that makes this such a great series that as a youngster you can appreciate because there's cool moments and it's kind of brutal and you're like whoa, and you get to see some cool fights. But then you go back and read it when you're older and you're like, man, this is deep. This is crazy seeing Spider-Man go through some of this stuff you don't always see, and especially nowadays you don't see heroes go through this kind of stuff. They don't go through like the hardships like this anymore, which is kind of sad because this is what makes heroes endearing. This is what endears them to you, is that they go through these hardships where you're like, whoa, I feel for this guy. He's like losing his temper, losing his mind out of despair. The whole city is turning against him when he's just trying to help. So really, really good story. And we're only halfway through, guys. We're only halfway through. So if you've enjoyed this stream so far, because this was something new that I wanted to try out, Throwback Thursdays, if you'd enjoyed it, I want you to use your web shooters and web sling the like button for me, and then swing on over from there and kick the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. There's a link to the Discord in the description below if you want to hang out and continue the discussion in between streams. Thank you to Bug, Tailgate, Kelvin, Baby Blue, Soundwave, anyone else, Marvelous, I believe I saw in here earlier, anyone else I might be missing. Thanks to everyone for hanging out. We'll continue the Maximum Carnage stream. Let's see, do you guys want to wait till next Thursday to continue this, or I could come back over the weekend and continue it? I'm down for whatever, because I really enjoy going through this stuff, but there's plenty more to go, so it's not like I won't have more material for the next Thursday, because we've got separation anxiety after this, and that's just talking about the Spider-Man books. I want to talk a lot about X-Men as well, since I said that that was my thing. I definitely want to go into some X-Men storylines like Age of Apocalypse. So there's plenty of stuff to cover. So, but at the same time, there's no rush. But put it in the chat, or if not, leave it in the comments. Let me know if you want to have part 2 over the weekend or wait till next Thursday, because I'm fine doing either. But I hope you guys enjoyed this trip down memory lane for Maximum Carnage. If you weren't familiar with the story, hopefully you're enjoying it, my retelling anyway. And join me next time for part 2 of Maximum Carnage, which will be the whole second half. We'll get to the end for sure. And regardless, I think I'll do a stream on Saturday, even if I don't cover this. Yeah, Tailgate's saying Thursday preferably. See, my gut's telling me to stick with Thursday simply because that's like the theme, Thursday Throwback or Throwback Thursday. But Saturday I'll probably do a stream regardless because I'm due for a super stream over the weekend. So we'll cover some other stuff. I'll have some other fun stuff ready to go for that. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. Hope you had a good time, and I will see you next time. This is Orbital Bacon signing off.